money, you're gonna feel different.
Straight up.
You might even, all that other advice I could have gave you, this is the short version. You know, get you a couple dollars, man. You're gonna feel different.
Nice little nip hustle. Big shout out to SPI, Spotter Low. You know, I'm in the black box. Had to come through, tap in, show love one time. Yeah, y'all make sure y'all subscribe. Stay tuned. All that.
I know I've long heard about Nick Cannon being affiliated with the PIRU. And I remember at first I was like, that was just hard for me to you know, I was shocking, not hard to believe. It was just shocking because he carries himself so well as a non-affiliate entertainer personality. He represents just for Black America so well. I had no idea that he would be so closely affiliated with any type of gang, let alone an original type California gang. Then I believe somewhere down the line I learned it was an affiliation through his father. And that's just what I would have in the back of my mind to this day about how and why he affiliated with the PIRU. But Warren Cali did a video on it, and I said, shit, might as well get some details on a legend like Nick Cannon and see what's going on with him and his PIRU. I know it's Dago. I heard his pops was a hell of a nigga in Dago, if not an originator, a first of something. I don't want to misquote or misstate what I may have once heard, but I'm pretty sure we finna get the details right here in Warren Cali. Let's check it out.
To Warren Cali. Long before he became a Hollywood star, Nick Cannon was just another kid growing up in one of Southeast San Diego's most notorious neighborhoods. Their history of Lincoln Park stretches back to the years following World War II, as San Diego expanded eastward during the 1940s and 50s. New housing developments were built to accommodate the city's rapidly growing population. Many African-American families moved into Southeast San Diego during this time period, after discrimination housing practices limited where they could buy homes. Over time, Lincoln Park developed into one of Southeast San Diego's largest Black communities, while also becoming home to Latino, Filipino, Samoan, and many other families who helped shape the neighborhood's identity. Despite its strong sense of community, economic challenges gradually became harder to ignore. Factories closed and good paying.
Yep, Polynesians is deep in Dago. Keyways too. I'm sure there's some Damos, but it's a lot of keyways.
Union jobs disappeared, advancement slowed, and schools struggled with fewer resources than wealthier parts of the city. Many young people grew up watching their parents work multiple jobs while still struggling to make ends meet. Others watch unemployment become normal parts of life. Across America, neighborhoods facing similar conditions experienced many of the same problems. Southeast San Diego was no exception. By the late 1970s, street gangs have become increasingly visible throughout Southern California. Los Angeles dominated headlines with the emergence of Crips and Bloods, but gang culture did not remain confined to Los Angeles County. Neighborhood crews and local sets began forming throughout California, each shaped by its own community, rivalries, and history. In Southeast San Diego, one of those groups became known as the Lincoln Park Bloods. Although Lincoln Park had existed for decades before gangs became a part of its own public.
I think my nigga London from Lincoln Park. He from Lincoln Park Skyline one, but free my nigga London, one of the coldest rappers I ever ran into from Dago.
Identity, the neighborhood began changing dramatically throughout the 70s. Like many urban communities across America, Southeast San Diego was affected by economic decline, shrinking employment, opportunities, and lasting effects of discrimination and housing practices. Many of their families worked hard to build stable lives, but resources became increasingly limited. Schools struggled, and young people often found themselves growing up in neighborhoods where opportunity felt scarce. As the Bloods and the Crips expanded throughout Southern California, San Diego developed its own street organizations that reflected local neighborhoods. Among the most recognized was Lincoln Park Bloods, a gang whose identity became closely connected to the streets surrounding Bay Vista housing projects and also Lincoln Park community. Their reputation continued to grow throughout the 80s as conflicts with rival neighborhoods intensified. That included shootings, assaults, and territorial disputes became increasingly common, drawing the attention of local law enforcement and the media. Although many residents didn't have anything to do with the gang activity, the neighborhood's name became closely associated with violence, making it difficult for outsiders to separate the community.
I thought them was just 4-7. That's an L they throwing up
from the actions of some individuals. By the late 80s and into the 90s, Southeast San Diego was experiencing many of the same challenges affecting cities across California. The crack cocaine epidemic fueled violent competition over drug sales, firearms became more common in neighborhood conflicts, and homicide rates climbed. Kids growing up in Lincoln Park became accustomed to seeing police patrols, hearing helicopters overhead, and witnessing the aftermath of shootings that occurred blocks away. This was within the environment that Nick Cannon spent his childhood in. Nick Cannon was born on October 8th of 1980, at the time when Southeast San Diego was beginning one of the most turbulent periods in its history. Both of his parents were still teenagers when he was born, and they both were still in high school. His dad, James, had deep ties to the Lincoln Park neighborhood and was involved with the Lincoln Park during his younger years in his life, being stated to be one of the early founders of the gang. His time in the streets would lead to jail time and eventually serving time in prison, but he later became
I knew I heard he was one of the founders.
a Christian minister.
What I said in that interview was that he was one of the first homies around at the time, and the big homies that's original members that was the first homies told me this. You feel me? Nick family been around in our neighborhood for a long time, and they grew up in the heart of our neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm from this, but I don't glorify that. And even still to this day, the stuff that I grew up around and grew up in, I tried not to glorify it, but it is what it is. Like, yeah, my dad is what we consider in our neighborhood a real OG. Like, and even the things he had to overcome and the obstacles, and now he's a man of the cloth and a man of the community. But yeah, he was one of them guys.
Okay, so he actually started that whole set.
Yeah.
Beautiful. My name is James Cannon, born right here in San Diego, California. I love this city, the city by the sea, the home of the Chargers. I have five sons. My oldest son is Nick Cannon, who I love tremendously. I've been running his foundation behind the scenes, working with youth all over this country, and we so excited. Anytime I can get Nick to come out and speak to young people, man, I watch the young people grow, but I also watch Nick grow.
Nick has often reflected on how unusual it was growing up with a father whose life represented two completely different worlds, one shaped by the streets and another centered around faith, redemption, and helping others avoid the same mistakes. Despite his father's influence, Nick spent much of his childhood being raised by his grandparents. He described his grandpa as one of the strongest role models in his life. He emphasized discipline, education, and accountability, encouraging Nick to think beyond the boundaries of his neighborhood. At home, he was taught values that stress hard work and personal responsibility. But once he stepped outside, he entered a world where respect was often measured differently. Growing up in Lincoln Park also meant that Nick simply couldn't ignore the gang culture. Many of the people that he knew were connected to the streets, and because of his family history, he was familiar with individuals who earned reputations throughout the hood. Just living in that community, he was naturally associated with people involved in the gang life, from childhood friends who later became Bloods, or just older guys in his neighborhood he knew and seen every day.
They showing clips of Mitchie Slick. I wonder if Mitchie Slick has ever been able to benefit off of Nick Cannon's ties to his community. I'm curious.
That made many assume he was a part of the Lincoln Park Bloods himself because of where he lived and who he spent time around. He never considered himself a formally initiated member. Instead, he describes his childhood as living alongside gang culture while trying to avoid being completely consumed by it. But being a kid, he tried to be cool and look the part, which included dressing the way that bangers would. As Nick entered his teenage years, another side of his personality began separating.
That's crazy, because when he hit the scene, you would have never had a clue he really knew what he'd do. I got to applaud him that for being able to do both so well that I remember when he came out, we definitely couldn't tell. Oh, mama. He gets a round of applause. He do look kind of slick right there, like he knew he was going to be up to something big, whether we knew it or not, or his peoples.
Him from his peers. He possessed a natural ability to entertain people, whether it was making his classmates laugh, performing impressions, writing music, or simply commanding attention whenever he entered a room. Teachers, friends, and family members recognized that he had unusual charisma long before television executives ever noticed him. While many teenagers looking for validation through their reputation on the streets, Nick found that he could earn respect by making people laugh and telling stories and performing in front of audiences. It was the first glimpse of his future that looked very different from the one many expected from a young man growing up in Southeast San Diego. His passion for performing continued to grow throughout high school. Nick became increasingly interested in comedy and music and spending as much time as possible developing his craft while balancing the realities of growing up in his neighborhood, which was still struggling with violence. He has said that one of his biggest turning points of life came after losing a close friend to street violence. Watching someone his own age lose their life forced him to confront a difficult reality. The path he was surrounded by often ended up in prison or death. That experience, combined with the encouragement he received from his family and opportunities found through entertainment, convinced him that he wanted a different future. By the time he graduated from high school, Nick had already begun performing in stand-up comedy shows at local clubs and talent competitions throughout Southern California. He quickly developed a reputation for his confidence on stage and an energy that separated him from comedians that was much older. While many aspiring entertainers struggle for years before receiving a break, Nick's natural charisma opened doors surprisingly early. Before long, that confidence would catch the attention of producers of Nickelodeon, setting the stage for a career that would completely transform his life and take him thousands of miles away from the streets where his story first began.
Because it was a time, actually during high school where I felt like I was at a crossroads. And I actually remember even having this conversation with my family, like, yo, a lot of my friends are getting shot. A lot of people I know close to me are dying. I have an opportunity to be in this entertainment thing. And obviously everybody wants to be successful at something, but when one day, people are shooting drive-bys at your school, and you're going to football games and not really making it home, and the next day you can take a train ride to Los Angeles and don't have to deal with any of that because you're in Hollywood. Yo, man, once Nickelodeon called, I locked in. I forgot about all of that stuff. I was gonna be the corniest dude. Especially when corny checks start coming too. And
he did that because he definitely hit the same corner. Salute, cuz you did that. Whooped the system ass, hit it on their ass, slid right in. The spook that sat by the door, rest in peace, neighborhood nipped the crib for even lacing us up on that concept.
You see another pair of khakis or rags or none of that for me after that.
Despite achieving worldwide fame, Nick has never completely separated himself from where he came from. Throughout his career, he has spoke openly about his upbringing in Southeast San Diego and the lessons he learned growing up around violence, poverty, and gang culture. Rather than pretending that part of his life never existed, he has used it as a reminder why mentorship, education, and opportunities matter. He's an example as other opportunities outside of the streets to make it out the hood.
One thing being in this gang life, street life does, it makes you betray your smile often. And that nigga Nick Cannon realized the power of the smile and the charisma and the charm, and he won. Man, that's a success story. Shout out to him and his pops, man. Oh, my mama.
Get you some money, you're gonna feel different.
Straight up.
You might even, all that other advice I could have gave you, this is the short version. Get you a couple dollars, man. You're gonna feel different.
Next little net hustle. Big shout out to SPI, Spotter Low. I'm in the black box, had to come through, tap in, show love one time. Yeah, y'all make sure y'all subscribe. Stay tuned, all that.